Hi guys, Harry here, and the Chris Chibnall era of Doctor Who is probably the most divisive era ever in Doctor Who. However, Chris Chibnall recently did an interview with Free Radio Skaro, in which he broke some secrets that he had, of course, in his era of Doctor Who. But before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe, also leave a like and comment down below, and let's get into the video. So, all this information is from Free Radio Skaro, in which, of course, Chris Chibnall did the interview, and there's also some information from William Who as well, who went kind of through all this information, breaking down what it really means into more digestible form. So, thank you to those two for having this information. And let's get into what Chris Chibnall said on some of the things he did whilst making his era of Doctor Who. So, of course, one of the main things that people are really excited for in the Russell T Davies era too is, of course, probably the return of Christmas specials. It's not fully confirmed. I still don't think that it's Christmas specials, but it's basically everything but confirmed. But of course, in the Chris Chibnall era, we had New Year's Day specials. However, in this interview, Chris Chibnall confirmed it was the BBC's idea to move away from Christmas specials. And actually, he intended Spyfall, of course, the first episode of Series 12 and kind of the New Year special as well. He actually intended that to be for Christmas Day. But the BBC deemed Spyfall too scary for Christmas, and thus it got moved to, of course, New Year's Day. And another, quite amazing part I found was that Spyfall Part 2 was actually supposed to come out the next day, on Boxing Day, if Spyfall didn't get moved to, of course, New Year's Day, and it got its Christmas Day slot. And the thing is, this kind of turns the whole Series 12, at least the start, up on its head. Because if it was on Christmas Day, that is one less week than the New Year's Day special. And if Spyfall Part 2 was supposed to come out on Boxing Day, that is 2 weeks prior to when we actually got Spyfall, 1 week after New Year's Day. And that is amazing. Of course, we're getting a lot more Doctor Who earlier, and would have had to wait a bit longer, of course, for Flux. But I think that would have been really great. And of course, Christmas specials is something that the fandom has really wanted. I don't know about Resolution, though. I don't know whether Chris Chibnall tried New Year specials and then he wanted to do Christmas specials, but the BBC said, no, you got to stick with New Year specials because this is too scary for Christmas time. Because Resolution is kind of centered more around New Year's, and there's a lot of New Year's stuff in it. So maybe it was kind of the BBC said you have to stick with New Year specials. But it's just kind of fun that I think that Chris Chibnall got a lot of flack for not having Christmas specials when he wanted a Christmas special. Another critical part of Chris Chibnall's era is that the marketing was bad. And I admit that I was one of those people that said the marketing was bad, and I stand by that. I actually made a video that I will link up in the cards above on why the marketing is bad in his era. And actually, he said that the marketing for Doctor Who, especially Series 12 and Flux, was much more difficult due to budget constraints from the BBC. So again, it's the BBC that is kind of, degrading this era. It's not really the right of the showrunner, Chris Chibnall. And another bad thing was that he went on to say that Doctor Who was only allowed to advertise on the BBC. Of course, that is its main source. Doctor Who is on the BBC. However, you're only going to be on the BBC if you're watching shows that you like on the BBC, one of which being Doctor Who. So you're being advertised what you are potentially going to watch anyway, which is really bad. However, Chris Chibnall did go on to say that hopefully Doctor Who will be moving onwards and upwards because they will have now more money with the Disney Plus deal, saying that the budget constraints from the BBC they will be able to put more money into actually doing the marketing. And of course, with Disney Plus, they can now Disney can advertise Doctor Who. So all of that Disney branding can go into marketing Doctor Who, and it can reach loads of other people rather than just people watching the BBC. And of course, as I said, more money to go into the marketing. So Doctor Who, you can't not look at a TV or somewhere else without seeing Doctor Who, which is really great for the future of the show. Chris Chibnall also went on to say that Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror was the only episode that he didn't edit the script for at all. Every other episode he edited the script or he wrote it himself fully, but he didn't edit that script at all, and that was the only one. And I think Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror is one of the best scripts episodes in the Chibnall era, but I don't think it's absolutely the best one, but it's just really goes to show how Chibnall can make an episode better, and he can also make an episode worse. It really depends on what the writer wants at that point in time, but I just thought that was a fun little thing to mention. And speaking of episodes, Chris Chibnall said the real reason there was an episode decrease was the fact that the budget had been static for a while. There were a lot of rumours going around speculating if Chris Chibnall, that era, had a bigger budget than the Russell T Davies era one and Stephen Moffat era had if they had a smaller budget, and then it got bigger once the Chris Chibnall era came in. However, it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to have been extremely static from the Capaldi era into the Chibnall era, and then it probably went up slowly. As I will say, Power of the Doctor is amazing. The VFX towards that is amazing. And the real reason for the budget decrease, rather than just the fact that the budget was static, was each episode with an episode decrease got a slightly higher budget than it normally would have if there was more episodes. So for those episodes to look the best they could be, of course that higher budget with with an episode decrease, the budget got higher for each actual particular episode, of course with an episode decrease. So that went into the VFX, which I will say looked amazing in the Chibnall era, especially the Power of the Doctor, and of course filming abroad, which they filmed abroad a lot. So actually, I think this was really a masterstroke by Chris Chibnall and the crew, and probably the cast as well, to film abroad, so we didn't get sick of the same Welsh quarry that every alien planet is in, and we actually got some trips abroad to see some new things that we don't normally get every week in Doctor Who. And Chris Chibnall also stated that the episode decrease was that new TV series were only 6 to 8 episodes, so they wanted to keep in line with other TV series obviously being produced nowadays, as they're only 6 to 8 episodes normally, and of course Doctor Who had a lot more, but now it's more in line with TV shows we see nowadays, which are less episodes. And something I found really horrible, and that I really hated that this cast and crew had to put up with, was that Chris Chibnall stated that there were production issue narratives shared online that weren't true, and he said that people, especially these journalists, were lying. During Series 11, in the filming, a journalist phoned them claiming staff were refusing to work, and Jodie was forcing them to work until 2 a.m. And he just said that was crazy. That was definitely not true, and he has stated many times that Jodie is such a lovely person to work with, and I'm absolutely sure that he is right in that. I'm sure Jodie is amazing. And it's really a shame that filming was probably interrupted by them claiming that it was terrible conditions for the staff to work in. I can't believe anyone would perpetuate that lie just to probably gain, recognition online. That is just a terrible thing to do. But unfortunately, they had to put up with that. However, a more fun thing is that they were supposed to have a brand president in line for Chris Chibnall's era, and apparently he said that this person was amazing. I don't know who it is. I possibly can't speculate in this video. Maybe another video. If you would like that, let me know down in the comments below if you want me to speculate who that was. But sadly, a brand president never worked out. So this is someone who would have controlled all the branding, all the marketing, merchandising for, of course, Doctor Who. However, it was something out of Chris Chibnall's control, but he said it would have been fantastic for the show. Because for context, Edward Russell was the show's brand manager from 2007 until 2017, and of course he was big in Doctor Who. And James Page is now confirmed as the brand manager for the Russell T Davies 2 era, and Chris Chibnall said with a brand manager it would have led to a very different approach for the show, but probably would have worked out mostly the same. We probably still would have got David Tennant now, but the ratings might not have declined as much as they did in the Chibnall era. And as I said, a different approach from the show now. Well, it could have been good or it could have been bad. We've seen goodness and badness in the Chibnall era. And speaking of something good and people have overlooked, is that Chris Chibnall said that the team wanted to do spin-offs, something that the fandom have been clamouring for a long time. However, the budget remains static a lot, so it prevented them from achieving spin-offs. However, they did manage to do a podcast spin-off on BBC Sounds called Doctor Who Redacted, which consisted of 10 episodes released right after the Easter special Legend of the Sea Devils. But if the budget was increased, they might have had multiple spin-offs, and some of these spin-offs might have been an actual TV show rather than just a podcast spin-off. However, I do say that I think Doctor Who Redacted is great, and if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. It's still on BBC Sounds, and I actually did a breakdown of all of Doctor Who Redacted, and I will link that up in the cards above. It's just amazing. So even without the budget being as big as people thought as people thought it was, and then wanting to do spin-offs, they still did pretty good with a podcast spin-off, of course being Doctor Who Redacted. And something that I think people thought, Chris and Jodie, Chris wanted Jodie to continue as the Doctor, and Chris was going to do more series than any other past showrunner. Chris Chibnall revealed that he and Jodie Whittaker had a pact to do 3 years of Doctor Who, and then they would leave, of course, Doctor Who together. And Chris Chibnall again went on to state that he definitely didn't want to do the 60th anniversary. His 3 years probably would have expired by then, which we see they have. However, a lot of people really thought that Chibnall wanted to do the 60th anniversary, but I can see how it would take a toll on people. They said Stephen Moffat having to deal with the 50th anniversary, as well as having Series 7B to do as well. I mean, say what you will about Stephen Moffat, but he did pretty good having Series 7B and doing the 50th anniversary as well. And I predict that Russell T Davies can do just as amazingly with the 60th anniversary. And Chris Chibnall said he was so excited to watch Doctor Who, The Power of the Doctor, the regeneration scene when it came out. But unfortunately, he had to watch it, of course, to sign off on it, to say, yes, this is my seal of approval that it goes out, because he was the showrunner at that time. He had to sign off on every episode, and he was just so excited to see that David Tennant was back and what the regeneration scene looked like. And another little fun thing, just to end off this video, a funny thing was that Chris Chibnall said that his favourite Doctor Who rumour in his time as showrunner was that there was supposed to be a cat companion that was rumoured for Doctor Who Series 11. Just amazing that little rumour started circulating around, and maybe it would have been like the cat nuns nurses from the Russell T Davies era 1, maybe like the cat person from Orphan 55, or maybe a cat version of the Lupari race, but instead of dogs, cats. It could have been anything like that, or a completely new cat companion, but of course we didn't get anything like a Doctor Who cat companion. So that was just one of the funniest and favourite Doctor Who rumours that Chris Chibnall had heard on his time as showrunner. But I think this is all amazing. Some very, deep things that we didn't know about and made me, at least, see Chris Chibnall's era in a more positive light. I do think his era is probably the weakest of Doctor Who, but just seeing this, the things that he wanted to do, that he was pressured into pushing the other way by the BBC, or by journalists, or by other members of staff, like higher-ups, of course, than him, I think he did amazingly. And of course, onwards and upwards to Russell T Davies era too, and of course David Tennant, and then more into Ncuti Gatwa. But let me know down in the comments below if this makes you see Chris Chibnall's era in a more positive light. I just think it was amazing what they could have done. But also, if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, also subscribe, and share it out, and I will see you in the next one.